All right, good day, my friends. Welcome to another episode of the Pain and Performance Podcast, where we try and unpack the latest research, technology, experts in terms of health improvement and health transformation. And I've got kind of some exciting research on my desk today that we're going to unpack, because I think this will make a really cool episode for a lot of people to be able to use in their own lives. So let me first kind of explain a little bit of what the research is. So there was a study that came out in the British Medical Journal Military Health, and what that research was on was the impact of cold exposure on life satisfaction on soldiers. And what they did was took about 50 soldiers, male and female, from the age of 19 to 30, and they put them in a couple of different groups. One where they regularly performed cold exposure for 8 weeks, so for 2 months, and they had these people, and the other group obviously did not, the control group. So they had them fill out quite a few different kind of life satisfaction, body composition, kind of questionnaires and assessments. And they also had them do a self-rating in terms of anxiety over the course of the study. And the results were quite interesting. In the group that did regular cold exposure, what they found was there was about a 6.3% increase or improvement in self-perceived health satisfaction, and a 6.2% increase in self-perceived sexual satisfaction, along with an improvement in waist circumference, abdominal fat of 5.5%, and improved perceived anxiety. So all of this together, you look at it in this group of, fairly healthy young soldiers, noticed a roughly 6% improvement in overall life satisfaction, which, when we look at it on the surface, you're like, what is happening that they're doing cold exposure that is improving so many different areas of their satisfaction in regards to just overall health in life? And I don't think this is completely, out of the norm or out of the ordinary in terms of the research that we have seen in the past with health and cryotherapy. Because if you look at it and we dig into cryotherapy and cryotherapy's effects on mood and on hormone regulation, it starts to make quite a bit of sense. So let's first kind of unpack what happens whenever you have a short-term cold exposure. So the first thing that happens is something called norepinephrine gets released, and that norepinephrine acts as like a neurotransmitter and a hormone that prepares us for action. So when these levels go up, we get an energy boost. We're ready to go. We get really alert. We get quite focused. We get kind of ready physically to act. So that norepinephrine release does quite a bit to improve our ability to take action, and it gives us a kind of feel good kind of boost in this heightened state where I'm ready for action. I'm not in that kind of down, lethargic state. So very, very helpful in terms of like getting us prepared for activity. The other thing that happens is dopamine gets released. So this dopamine is kind of referred to as the feel-good neurotransmitter, and it's very closely linked to like our pleasure, our reward, and motivation centers. Y'all probably heard of dopamine as like the happiness hormone, so to speak. And cold exposure leads to the release of dopamine by about 250%, and that tends to last over a large period of time, like quite a few hours. So when we come out of that and we get this kind of post cryotherapy glow, this post-cold exposure, I just feel really good. A lot of that's dopamine related, and we just feel happy, we feel content, we feel satisfied. So it I think does two things. We get this kind of improvement from this short-term norepinephrine and dopamine boost where we feel really good, we feel ready for action, and we feel kind of happy about, everything in life for a little while with this kind of elevated dopamine level. But when we also look at what's happening if we do this consistently, like the study group did, I think we are creating kind of a new pathway. So if we're strengthening this kind of hormone and neurotransmitter pathway, we get better at using it. We get better at tapping into it. So I think it's a really, really helpful thing to be experiencing quite regularly, because not only do we get that short-term improvement, but I think it leads to better ability to access those pathways in other areas of our life. So very, very helpful in terms of like getting cold exposure to trigger the release of norepinephrine and dopamine and all the physiological processes that come after that. So that means that for a while after our cold exposure, we're going to have that improved mood, that better energy, kind of overall emotional well-being. I just feel better emotionally. And there's a flip side to this. If we look at the other side of this, there's going to be a change in our cortisol levels. So a lot of people have heard of cortisol, known as like the stress hormone. And when we get in cold exposure, we have an interesting thing that happens. So we get this short-term bump because we get stressed, and cortisol responds to stress. And then as we come off of that, we actually get kind of a recalibration, if you will, where our cortisol levels kind of recalibrate and reset at a lower baseline than they were. And so this can be really, really helpful at improving our hormonal balance, especially in people who have higher baseline cortisol. Stress levels are staying higher from a hormonal standpoint. If we start to use cryotherapy consistently, like the group did for 8 weeks, we will reset that point of baseline for cortisol at a lower level. So we just feel better chemically from an emotional standpoint. And this is kind of an intricate balance, right? You know, we don't want a severe suppression of cortisol. We don't want a significant elevation of dopamine. You know, we want kind of a nice balance in there where we just feel really good about who we are. And, you know, when I first saw this study and I said like, oh, it's a 6.2, 6.3% improvement, it doesn't seem like that much. But then when you actually look at it, we don't want some like 20 or 30% improvement in satisfaction. That's almost manufactured. It's almost too much to the point where I think it puts us in like kind of an unstable category. But if we're getting that 6%, especially in a group of soldiers, that's probably that like almost perfect realm where I feel better overall. I'm not, you know, spiked where I'm just like happy about everything and nothing can affect me. That's not what we want. We just want to feel better. And with a lot of our patients, whenever they are dealing with stress, what we'll do is we will use cold exposure to help improve, you know, kind of mood, mental health, and chemical health, hormonal balance, but we'll also put them on like ashwagandha and omega-3s. And when we stack all that together, it makes such a powerful combination. And many people will say like, I feel like me again. I feel like myself again. And I think that's what we're looking for, is I want to feel very good like myself. I don't want to feel like I'm abnormally elevated or I'm happier. I want to still feel like me, but in a good way. And I think that's kind of what this research tends to point to, is that it wasn't a manufactured high, so to speak. It was just, hey, I'm 6 to 10% better. I just feel better. I feel more emotionally grounded. I feel a bit happier and a bit more motivated. And can't we all use a little bit of that? So on top of the other benefits we've talked about from cold exposure in terms of immune, inflammation, body composition, although this study kind of tends to point towards that, where with a 5% improvement in body composition, I think it's really helpful for us to see the mood enhancing benefits of cold exposure, how it does that on several levels in terms of balancing our nervous system, getting us kind of out of this consistent long-term sympathetic dominance where we kind of come down to a more relaxed state, cortisol lowers. And we also can use this in this short-term bump where we get this norepinephrine boost, and that can really help us to, you know, get out of these lulls whenever we need it. And I'll kind of give you a little anecdote. I use it a lot like that. If I have a day where I end and I don't feel like working out, I'll jump in and do a 3-minute cryo session before I go work out. And there's quite a bit of research on using that before you work out. But the biggest thing that I notice is I come out and I am much more motivated to go get a workout in. The other thing is, if I have a day, to be completely honest, where, I've had a lot going on and I've got some writing to do, I've got some podcasting to do, and I just have the don't wants, as people call it. One of the best things I've ever seen for that is to do cold exposure and then come out of the cold exposure and actually be ready to go. You're going to feel much more prepared to go and take action, and it gives you the short-term motivation. And the nice thing is that if we use it like that, every time I kind of feel like I need a little bit of that, I'm actually creating a new pathway, or I'm strengthening that pathway that leads to downstream long-term effects. So it's nice that I get the short-term boost so that I can accomplish my goals today. But if I do that repeatedly, I'm improving my baseline of mood and emotional balance so that I can stay there consistently. So hopefully that makes some sense to you. This is a really cool study in kind of a difficult to treat group, where we're looking at soldiers who have a lot going on. There's certainly a stress component to their job, and overall we improve their mood, we improve their life satisfaction, health satisfaction, sexual satisfaction by a decent amount, by 6 to 6.5%, which I think is probably a really nice level. So the way I think we should all use this, if we combine this research with Dr. Soberg's research, who said that to get the best benefits of cold exposure, we need about 11 minutes a week in multiple bouts. If we can start to figure out, can I do 3 to 4 bouts of cold exposure, whether that's cryotherapy a few times a week, cold showers, cold plunges, and we put all of those together in a routine that works for us, and we use it when we need it, kind of have that as that kind of ace in the hole of, I know I've got some stuff going on, I've got a few things to do, I'm kind of starting to feel my energy levels wane. I can go in and use cold exposure to get me off of that, get that short-term bump. Then I think we're setting up a really good mood-enhancing mental elevation and emotional elevation that's natural, that's sustainable in a very, very healthy way. So I think that's where this research kind of gets me excited. And we noticed that a lot in the office. We had quite a few patients when we switched over from one cryotherapy unit to the other that started to feel, hey, I don't quite feel like myself. I feel like I'm down a little bit more. And, it'd be interesting to measure that. Maybe I feel just 6% less happy. I feel 6% less or decrease in mood. And if I can elevate just that much, it gets me out of that funk, so to speak. And many of them came, and when we started doing cryo, they were like, I just never realized how much it affected my mood and my mental health, my mental well-being. So not to discount all the other forms and reasons to do cryotherapy, but I think this has to be at the top of the list, because if we lead with feeling better and feeling happier and more satisfied, the chance that we're going to make a good decision to eat better is high. The chance that we're going to take that step to exercise and take that action and ask for help and do those extra things raises quite a bit. So I just think that it can be a really helpful thing if we're using cold exposure to improve our mental health, our mood, and our kind of overall life satisfaction, as they showed in this study. So hopefully that helps. I think this is a very interesting take on what can happen with cold exposure. And if you know somebody who could use just a little bit of bump, share the episode with them. I think there's so many people who, when they hear this information, we see it when they come in the office, they're like, man, I just wish I had some of this earlier. That I think something like this, of coming and getting a cold exposure session, for 4 minutes of your day and you leave and it affects you the rest of your day and you just feel really, really good. A friend of mine texted me yesterday. He said, I came and did a cryotherapy session. What an amazing way to start your day. And I was like, how valuable is that, better than kind of morning coffee or anything like that. You actually get this mood boost and you're going to go throughout your day with kind of a better kind of hop in your step, and you're going to just feel a little bit more like you, a little happier, a little more satisfied, and you share that with the world. That can be pretty powerful stuff. So hopefully that helps some people. Hopefully that makes some sense to you. Let me know if you like these little kind of quick hitter episodes where we'll dive into some research. I've got a few other ones that we're going to hit, but don't forget to do that one thing to get a little bit healthier today, and maybe that should be cold exposure. Have a great day, everybody.